If you look at B2C and B2B, it's quite similar. Sure, there are differences, but basically what you're doing in B2C, you're trying to persuade a customer to make a buy. And that's a consumer. With B2B, you're trying to persuade a purchaser to make a buying decision in favor of your product. I think the big challenge that we're going to have as our customers are going to use more machine learning and AI and algorithms to make their buying decisions, how are we going to influence those? Right? Because indeed, we cannot have coffee with that algorithm.
You are connected to the Evolving Digital Podcast.
Hi, I'm Adam Butler, and this is Evolving Digital. We're here to pull back the curtains and share the secrets of digital giants and disruptors. We'll be bringing you high-quality, in-depth interviews, and all we ask of you is that you hit that subscribe button so we can keep doing this. Now let's jump into it.
Robby, big welcome here in our podcast. Let me start off with asking you a question on your career. So over the past 18 years, a lot of senior roles in sales and in marketing, and mainly in the high tech and manufacturing business, right? So you basically built your entire career in semiconductors, and I guess you've seen a lot of process changes over the years between marketing, sales, and how we interact with each other. Like my first question would be, what makes B2B and especially the tech world that we work in, what makes it an interesting environment for a marketeer or a sales guy?
Well, I mean, especially in high tech and in semiconductors, it's such fast paced, right? Everybody tells me that fast moving consumer goods, actually it's in the name, but it's much slower, right? So with us, if you make a decision tomorrow, it's actually too late. You have to make a decision today, right? So the pace is super high, at least in our organizations that I've worked for. And that's addictive, to be honest.
It's addictive.
It's addictive, right? It's an energy. It's a drug that you're on, and it's always you always want to be the first one with the best and newest idea and with the innovation, right? Both in products, but also in the way that you present your product, the way you market your product. And I think, like I said, if you do well a couple of times, or you have a few successes, then it becomes a drug, and it's absolutely addictive. And I wouldn't have wanted to do it in any other way.
And how about the complexity of it all? I mean, it's not a very. It's always you always are looking at a long type of buyer journey. The products that you market or the designs that you need to get into from your clients. It's not like your basic shoe or something that is for on the consumer side is very easily understandable. I mean, it's always innovative. It's always cutting edge, right? So is that also a challenge that as a salesperson to keep up the speed there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think timing is everything. So at NXP and now Nexperia, we sell let me say more essential semiconductors, right? So those come in at a later stage in the design flow. Right. So first they pick the micro, and then the peripherals, and then our discrete logic and whatever. And so you have to make sure that you are there, or at least top of mind, in the time when that they're in the decision making process for those type of products to solve their final problems before the design is finally fixed.
Right.
So in that sense, timing is absolutely crucial.
So how do you do that? Do you do a lot of market research on where your clients are working on, or is that market insights? Is that something you track, or
that's customer intimacy?
That's customer intimacy,
right? So if you are a good account manager, then you actually know the projects that your customer is working on, and you also know in which part of the cycle the customer is at the time, right? Because customers, of course, have multiple projects going on, right? So maybe project A is not yet at the stage where they would decide on products that are built around the core chips. And so, okay, you don't have to talk about that, but I know that the decision about project C is being made, I don't know, in the next 2 weeks. So that's why I start promoting my products now. I start to make sure that my customer knows the products that I have,
Right.
because for the longest time, I've heard, oh, you guys also sell those type of products? I didn't know. Because apparently did such a good job on marketing the other parts of our portfolio that customers actually didn't know that we also sold, more simpler products, I would say.
So did that change over the years? That customer intimacy, is it from more personal to more maybe informative on a digital level, or how does that is it different now, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it used to be much more face to face, and nowadays, of course, on email, on phone call, on text. So you have Teams. You have much more frequent, I think, contact.
Yeah.
But the contacts are probably less intense, and so more times a week.
Yeah.
But less intense or informative somehow.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, we notice the same thing. I mean, I have customers that are not even at the office anymore.
Yeah.
Which makes it very hard for us to talk to each other on a face-to-face kind of level. Walking in, meeting one client at the office, and then walking to the next room and talking to somebody else is not just you don't switch that easily. Doing everything digital. So is that also something that in a more of a global market becomes, because I mean, I don't know how many takeoffs she did in 10 years ago, but you were in a plane a lot, I guess, right?
Yes, a lot.
That's different.
That's absolutely different, right? And we still have to do that, right? Especially with new customers, you still do that. But with somebody that you know for, I don't know, so many years, it's okay to skip the quarterly meeting and then see each other twice a year only, right? Because you actually know what's going on. You stay in touch over Teams, WhatsApp, or whatever, or WeChat. But yeah, no, things have absolutely changed. I remember, and maybe we'll have to see if this is a good example. Yeah. But a lot of information used to be shared outside when people were smoking.
Yeah.
And now everybody's on the wants to be healthy and stuff.
Yeah.
So we're not smoking anymore. And I fully support that.
Yeah.
I also quit smoking 10 years ago or something like that.
Me too.
But actually, that informal setting is where most information was shared between supplier and a customer.
Yeah.
And those kinds of instances you have to try to recreate, which is very difficult in the digital world, right?
Yeah.
So it's the walk to the coffee machine right before the meeting starts.
Yeah.
You miss that when you go on a Teams meeting.
Yeah, definitely.
Because when you go on a Teams meeting, you immediately start to talk about the topics, and you miss this informal.
More informal, more social type of interaction with your clients. So, well, a good point. Let's dig a little bit deeper on that, because that's also my kind of focus that we try to bring to our clients. But so creating a customer intimacy with using digital means, is it something? Because I always take the assumption, your best account manager, look at what he is doing in a what used to be a normal setting. How can we mimic that digitally? But then there was this thing called GDPR, so we couldn't be that direct anymore. So we need to be very careful on how we would use the data that we had to create more intimacy that would look more like a face-to-face or a personal contact with your clients. So if you think as a marketeer, right, what are those key points that you should look at to at least get close to what in-person contact can do? Is that from a digital perspective? So in your marketing, what you should definitely look at?
Yeah, I mean, you should almost compare it to actual property, right? So I also own a candy store, as you know.
Yeah.
Right there.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But there, the most important area of your shop is the first meter that a customer sees, right?
Yeah.
Both on the left and the right hand side. And the digital version of that is your homepage.
Yeah.
Right. If your customer is actually visiting your homepage, then the prime area on that page is what you immediately see, right? So you have to make sure that whatever you show and share on those pages is what the customer indeed is looking for, right?
It needs to be relevant. Then.
It needs to be super relevant.
Yeah.
It needs to make the customer hungry for more.
Yep.
Right. So you want them to click on something and then they go to another page.
Yeah.
So that is an example, I think, of what has really changed and what we have seen.
Do you also see that in B2B? I mean, because when you're, I don't know, on Zalando and you're shopping for, going back to that B2C example again, but you show, they know once you get to the store if you're a man or a woman, and they will show you relevant items. So they won't show you the latest female collection.
Yeah.
They will, for you and me, it will be new shoes and or new tennis shoes or new pedal shoes.
Yeah.
That fits our kind of need and what we've been buying in the future. I don't see that happening a lot in B2B, and especially not in manufacturing.
No.
Is
No.
that something that we should focus on? Because I, having a very hard time to tell that story. Because I agree with you,
Yeah.
but what is that? What is that? More of the traditional mindset that people have in those industries, or is it just that they don't know?
No, they have the traditional mindset. Absolutely. Right. So let me be clear about that. The conversations that we are having and that we're struggling all the time with. So, I mean, in my industry, or in our industry, right, engineers design the newest products.
Yeah.
Right. But those are not necessarily the people that understand how to market a product and which product you should put on your front page. Because even if it's the best solution on paper, right? If it has the most features, it may not be the product that a customer is looking for. So what you actually need to do is to understand the journey from the customer. How do they get to your homepage?
Yeah.
Right.
What are they looking for? What is their their background, or what is their profile?
Yeah. What problem are they trying to solve?
Oh,
right.
even
So
better. Yeah.
somehow you need to get a grasp on that kind of information, and I think if we are able to do that, because previously, right, a customer would call an account manager and say, "Hey, I have this problem. Can you stop by and show me your solutions?"
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So you need to somehow find a way to recreate that moment.
That cycle. Yeah. Yeah.
But then digitally, and I think we are far away from that still.
We show a lot of product.
We show products.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just show products. Correct. And then we say we talk about solutions or applications, but in the end we still talk about the products.
Yeah,
very
we
much.
kind of need to focus more on what it is that the customer or potential customer is actually looking for, actually needs, right? So it's
Absolutely. So I really think.
Yeah.
So I really think that we have to change our mindset. A few years ago, they started with we don't do the 4 or 5 P's anymore of marketing, but we go towards safe, right? Yeah. And everybody likes that idea.
Yep.
When you tell them, but people stick to the P's.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to talk about solutions, not about products, right?
Yeah.
Really, again, what is the problem the customer is trying to solve, and which solution do you have to that problem? And I think that is still a way of thinking that we have to implement much more.
Yeah. Yeah, so I agree. I mean, I think more from a solution perspective is always better. I think I still believe the 4 Ps or 5 or 7 or whatever, how many we have nowadays, are still important to have in your foundation of your marketing, right? I mean, you need to think about who you're selling to, but you also need to actually start thinking about the planet, the P of the planet, right? It's a big thing.
Yeah.
But that should be in the foundation. But actually, you're in your how you get to your clients and how do you persuade them, and how do you? I mean, there's an overwhelming amount of information available to a lot of clients that wasn't available 5 years ago, right? So how do you stick out from the crowd? And I think the latest report I read from I think it was Forrester on that one was that a lot of buyers feel overwhelmed with the information that is available, and also conflicting information, which all seems really true what they're reading, but they're still conflicting. So reading from one supplier to the other supplier, they sell the same thing, but they have a different approach. So,
or worse, from the same supplier, 2 solutions that claim to solve the same problem, right?
That's even worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is something that we dealt with a few times.
Yeah.
But
So do you have a kind of, because we're going back and forth on how it used to be and how it's probably going to be. Do you have a good example on how in let's call them the old days, but how you would you would solve or how you would solve a problem for a client that called you up and I don't know, you would see him, or how would you do that face-to-face thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I have an example, which is not my own story, but it's an anecdote from a colleague of mine. This was in the times when wearables were starting to get
It's not that long.
Popular wearable device.
Ago.
No, correct. Not that long ago, but still. And I remember that we were fighting for a socket with one of our competitors, and we are based out of Silicon Valley at the time where that colleague was. And the customer called both suppliers and said, "Hey, I'm working on my design. I'm finalizing my design. I still need this one chip to make it work properly." And my colleague, he just got a sample of one of those products, got in the car,
like a physical sample,
like a physical sample, which he happened to have around around his desk. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Instead of sample stores. So we, of course, have central sample stores in Asia, and then it takes 2 days to ship or whatever. But he also always kept a few devices or a few samples of certain devices literally in his desk. And this happened to be one of those devices that customer needed. So he got in the car, drove to the customer. Means we were the first one to be there. And the timing is everything, right? Timing. And we got designed in, and that's how we got into the first design of those wearables.
Wow.
Which was a big success.
Relevant and timing then.
Absolutely. And just being there,
awesome.
right? Just being there. So, sometimes people say you have to be, that you are lucky when you are successful, but it's not the case, right? You have to make sure that you are present, right? Then you get lucky, and then you execute, right? So we were present. The customer knew what we had in our portfolio.
Yeah, so he was aware.
Yeah, then we got lucky that we were so close by.
Yeah.
But then we executed by, taking that sample and driving to the customer.
Yeah.
So, so that's how it could happen in the old days, right?
Yeah, but I think, if you look at it, like you just said, it is the same thing you have to be doing when you're in a digital landscape, right? Yeah. So making sure that you have product or something available that people can download or people can order directly. Yeah, it's critical to maybe get that first win in, right?
Yeah, absolutely, cool. Absolutely. We still sell hardware, or at least semiconductors sell hardware, right?
Yeah.
So.
And now, so you and I have done a campaign, digital campaign, long time ago, which was reasonably successful. It was more of an awareness type of campaign with also a lot of lead gen, which would follow that. So that goes to showing what we have, and then making sure that they would download a sample or at least download the handbook to understand what the product can do for them. That's fairly well, it wasn't basic, but it was just the first steps in getting a digital campaign up and running in a global company. Looking back at that and then looking forward, is there anything that you would do now that would be totally different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one thing that I think was not successful of that campaign was actually what did we do with those leads?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So we had thousands of leads actually of customers that downloaded the information. We sent those handbooks out. But then how do you follow up, right? How do you execute on the follow up? That is, I think, something we still have to do better.
Yeah.
And you need a sales organization for that, right? To understand that it's actually relevant to follow up on those leads, to understand that actually the next big customer is now still a long tail customer.
Yeah, yeah. But good you bring that part up, because I think, and it's been more of a focus point for us to better understand why certain things are successful and others are not, and just not looking at the campaigns we're running or the customer profiles we're building digitally. It's more of the process around it that we kind of have now we call it our basically our exploration phase to see if all the pieces of the puzzle are there before we start actually trying to solve the puzzle. And one of those things is the alignment between what marketing, well, first what the company wants, what the goals and targets and stuff are, and then what sales needs, that marketing wants to do, and then exactly what you just said. Once execution is being done, how is it? This the leads in this case that we find. How do we process that into a running business? A running sales process, and what we kind of figured out over the past years is that alignment between sales and marketing is crucial. Usually, I haven't had any clients yet where it's one team. It's usually two separate teams.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of good effort is gone to waste because of misalignment. So a lot of money being spent on getting those leads, but if they're not being able to follow up, then we might have saved some money and not come up with 1,000 leads, but maybe with 200.
Yeah.
Because that was something that probably the sales organization would be better off doing. So what are your thoughts on having those two teams working together basically on the same goal? Does that need to change it's because things are working right now. What would happen if you put marketing and sales into one team and have them work on it at the same time?
Well, I think you would have to create almost a different kind of function or role in that organization, which is either a sales organization or a joint organization, sales and marketing, of people almost dedicated to identifying new customers and following up on those leads, right? Because most of the account managers that are managing a multi-million-dollar account, they're not going to look at these little customers that are potentially 100K or a few 100K or less even than that. So it's almost a dedicated function. The other option that you would have is that, like we do with digital marketing, right, where we hire an external agency like yourself, right? So you buy the expertise. There's probably expertise in the market to take that long list of thousands of leads and to check how viable those leads actually can be, which could be done potentially by your distribution partners.
Yep.
Mauser, DigiKey, those kind of retailers could play a role in that. That's how you could potentially solve that.
Right? So joining forces. So do you see sales focusing more on key accounts or focus accounts, and marketing focusing more on the long tail, as you call it?
Yes.
Is that something that?
Yes, correct. So
that will work better.
Yeah, where sales is focusing a lot indeed on the existing customer base. I think marketing sometimes steers more towards customers that are not yet customers, right? Manufacturers that are not yet prospects. And I think that's where potentially the mismatch is, right? And you almost, like I said before, have to create a dedicated role, business development, that really follows up and works hand in hand with marketing. And it kind of is there, but it's not yet working properly.
Cool. So if we take that thought a little bit further, could it be that marketing could be responsible for sales? I'm going out on a limb here.
Absolutely.
But then just and grow that account on a marketing way, and then until it becomes really like a focus account, and then hand it over to the person that is giving the personal attention to that account and grow it further? Or is it, because that's something I don't see yet happening a lot. Marketing does brochures, leaflets, and does campaigns. And then that's it. And then sales needs to follow up, and a lot of stuff is not being used, right? It's not a sales problem. It's not a marketing problem. It's a joint problem, as the way I see it. But if you would make your thought process, I guess, it's then marketing is already focused on those long tail prospects, maybe accounts, can service them, maybe in a portal, right? Where you can do like easy easy things to buy, or maybe or even an e-commerce environment.
Yeah.
Until it becomes like a major account or it grows and then it gets picked up by sales. Is that would that be in like an optimal?
That would absolutely be an optimal, right? But the problem there is it requires an investment.
Yeah.
Most likely, right? It requires time for that to be established.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the ROI will be as positive as most CEOs or CFOs would look at it.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I've thought of and have not yet successfully implemented, but the e-tailers, so the examples, the Mauser, DigiKey, Farnell, those are currently being managed and handled by our sales organization.
Yeah.
And so what do we do in a business review? We look at how much revenue they made for us.
Yeah.
Whereas actually you want to use those e-tailers to seed the market, right? To seed the long tail. Yeah. So from my perspective, actually those e-tailers should be managed by a marketing organization that is actually looking at them and has KPIs in place to see them, to use them as a marketing machine.
Yeah.
To seed the market, So, okay, so how many new customers?
Because all these e-tailers already have their own sales and marketing as well in place, right?
Yeah, but
so you can leverage on that.
Absolutely, and most of that is digital.
Yeah.
So yeah.
If you look at how sales has evolved, it's not like every sales guy is, well, things are being tracked, data is being gathered, let's call that. So everybody is on Salesforce, I guess, right? Or something
or
similar.
some homegrown tool, yeah,
something similar. But at least it's being logged. It's not just in the minds or in the brains of the sales guy anymore. Would that be something that is I think it's still early stage, right? For the adoption of all these digital sales tools. Would that be something that in B2B or in high tech and manufacturing is for key accounts, for focus accounts, is still, will it evolve further, or is it going to stay like this? Because I'm kind of thinking we're on this track of focus accounts and need personal attention, you need to be relevant. Yeah. But with everything happening in the past year on AI, for instance, just put it out there. How is that? Where is that? Is there something there that sales guy with like yourself with 15 years, 20 years of experience will pick up and run with to make his life easier or make service to his client better? Or is it going to be like the status quo that it's in right now? I'll put the data in, but I'm going to be in charge of everything that happens.
So it has to change, first of all, right? I don't think it's an option if it will or not. But what I think it's also very important, and that really is a leadership question almost, you have to make sure that you incentivize the behavior of the salesperson to actually use the CRM, right? Which is what you're saying. What I see now is that in many cases, or at least in certain cases that I know, that CRM is simply based as a sales incentive tool, right? Okay. Oh, I'm only going to put in the opportunity in there if I'm sure that I'm going to win. Because what happens if a salesperson logs an opportunity in a CRM and nothing happens to that opportunity, and then the report comes out, and a manager sees that, that opportunity hasn't happened, then the sales guy or girl gets questions about it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it takes time and effort and stuff. So I think we have to make sure that, there are certain successful CRM tools, right? Like Salesforce that you mentioned, right? It's a very popular tool. But I think the behavior of salespeople, at least in our type of organizations, needs to be incentivized or changed. And maybe we need to do that by doing better in showing how CRM can actually benefit them.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's where it still itches, that a salesperson doesn't see the value of a CRM tool yet, other than logging and tracking my sales incentive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also it's a leadership thing, of course. You need somebody in the board that actually wants to embrace that digital transformation, also in sales. I mean, in the end, it will be an evolution, right? So in the end, the people that are graduating now
Yes.
have certain expectations, and when they start working, that shit will be there for them to use. So why are we only using 20% of the capabilities of Salesforce?
Yes.
Right? They have this whole AI engine in there that can do predictive sales or marketing for a certain group of clients, or can segment audiences, in 2 seconds, where we would take 2 days. So why aren't we using that? So I think that it will be an evolution in the end, but if it's not there, right? So if there's no transition being made now, they probably have a hard time hiring the right persons in the future. So
But I think it's also
sorry.
it's a leadership thing, right? So I think what we see now in our older industries, right, our traditional manufacturing industries, is that there's still a lot of 50 plus, or maybe even more, people that are in the absolute top. And I think as that is changing, right, so the now 40 somethings are going to get more spots on those boards. They'll have a different mindset that will be closer to the people that are now graduating. It will not be completely the same, but
Right.
And I really believe that that is something that we should not overlook. The same with the working from home policy, right? Is completely different topic. But I know that a lot of people in the older generation, no, you have to be in the office, right? And we've had those conversations, and I think it's with working physically in the office, and this usage of digital tools that can actually help you to be much more efficient, effective, productive. Whatever.
It's also a matter of experience, because we at the beginning of our talk, we talked about those micro interactions. Walk to the coffee machine, right? I can almost assure you, my kids have no idea what that is. Walking to a coffee machine and having a chat. I mean, they were in graduating high school during Corona. They kind of missed that whole part of the social interaction with students and doing that kind of stuff. So. For us, that important part of looking somebody in the eye and having a nice chat of what they've done in the weekend, and then easing them into a sales talk. I think kids would be like, okay, opening teams, and like, okay, this is the agenda, let's start, and their counterpart will also expect that. So it's I don't know, it becomes very the whole remote working part becomes very distant or something. I don't know how that's going. I don't have the answer to that, but that's what I'm seeing right now. I see like a really the people that have experienced the way that we used to work have a very hard time adapting to or accepting that other way of working also works, because we kind of don't believe that.
But and now that we are still in this mixed generations, that's why the hybrid model is probably the way to go. And maybe if we translate that back to CRM systems, maybe the hybrid model in that, we have to translate that and think about how hybrid could look for that, where the 50 plus salesperson can work with it and feel comfortable, and the 30 plus.
Interesting. I mean, so when we went from basically a fully digital way of working, forced by the lockdown and stuff like that, that was something that everybody kind of accepted. That's what we should do. Had a lot of impact, of course, on how we do business in B2B, but also in that whole B2C realm, everything was kind of, was shut down. Stores were closed, theaters were closed. In B2B, we couldn't go to trade shows anymore. Almost complete industries were killed off by something like a simple virus. Maybe simple virus, but a virus. So how do you cope with those changes? I mean, I know you just said, I also have a candy store, which is, what is it, 180 degrees, the other opposite of what you've been doing, which is really cool. It's entrepreneurship. Is that something that will help us adapt to all that kind of mindset? help us adapt to all these changes that are facing us right now. So AI, remote working, digital transformation. So you're an entrepreneur as well. Is that key to survival almost? Is it like the adapting to change?
Yeah.
Is that
100%, right? So one of the things that we always say, at least in Nexperia, is the only thing constant is change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
Right. With us, from an organization perspective, from a product portfolio perspective, from new technologies like AI that we have to jump on and make sure that we are successful also in that space, and we're using it to our own benefit. But also, indeed, the way how we work. So the remote working, not going to trade shows, right? I actually think, at hindsight, it was great that we didn't have to go to those trade shows for 2 years.
It was a sales thing, right?
It was a sales thing, absolutely.
And that's a trade show was something that
yeah, but now, so we used to do every year, the same cycles. And it was actually quite refreshing to not have to do that for 2 years or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then, look how you could organize things differently.
Yeah.
And still try to reach your customer and still try to, get similar information across. Again, that social aspect you miss. But that's okay to miss it for a couple of years. And I think now, for example, Electronica, the biggest show in Europe, it's once every 2 years. And I think that's actually enough, right? If it's every year, that would have been, an overkill. And it
used to be every year.
Used to be every year.
Yeah,
And now it's nice to see each other every 2 years. But when it was during COVID, it was, or right after COVID, it was actually nice to see everyone again after 4 years.
Yeah.
And, keeps things fresh. And stuff. But anyway, you have to be flexible. I think, what we also did was the Power Life event, which I think was well received in the market. Something that we can be absolutely proud of. Also, the speed with which we were able to establish that, right? And it was okay, let's try it. Ended up being wildly successful. We would have never done that if COVID wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
We would have just gone to the PCIM, which is what we replaced it with.
So if you would would have a forward outlook on how things will change in marketing and sales, in high tech and manufacturing, or maybe in a total B2B environment, what will be your biggest takeaway? Is that to keep adapting or keep challenging?
Well, that's a very tough choice, but maybe to keep adapting, because challenging is anyway part of the DNA of at least most marketing and sales people.
Yeah.
If you look at B2C and B2B, it's quite similar. Sure, there are differences, but basically what you're doing in B2C, you're trying to, as a marketeer or a salesperson, you're trying to persuade a customer to make a buy, right?
Yeah.
And that's a consumer with B2C. With B2B, you're trying to persuade a purchaser to make a buying decision in favor of your product. I think the big challenge that we're going to have, and the biggest adaptation that we'll have to deal with as marketeers and salespeople, as our customers are going to use more machine learning and AI and algorithms to make their buying decisions, how are we going to influence those, right? Because indeed, we cannot have coffee with that algorithm or a smoke.
I would love to have.
I would love to.
Good discussion with the algorithm.
Yeah. So the B2AI or B2M, which is, that's going to be a big challenge that we'll have to adapt to. How are we going to make sure that we have the right tools in place to almost manipulate or outsmart that algorithm to make a buying decision that's in favor of what we're trying to sell? Yeah. I think that's the biggest challenge I have.
Good point. I think I'm going to park that one for a next podcast, because we have a final question for you, which is something that we ask all our guests, and that is our previous guest, Michiel. He had a question for you. It's not as much related to to the business, but more to the whole digital sphere. And so his question was, how do we ensure that our children interact with technology in a healthy way? I know you have young children, but with all the, like you said, how do we outsmart the algorithm not to push certain things to what our children will see on YouTube or YouTube Kids or
Well, it's exactly what you say. Actually, it's content, right? So I think we have to embrace technology, right? Yeah. Sure, screen time is important, but our kids, our next generation, is going to be exposed to all this technology that will help them also to be, more efficient, etc. But the content, that is absolutely crucial. We have to do content management. So YouTube is a free-for-all where anything can be posted. That's why I think it's much more important to, if you offer your children something, offer something that's professionally crafted. Right? You guys use craftsmanship a lot.
Yep.
That also goes for TV shows or movies, right? Again, on YouTube, I can put a video on YouTube, but whatever I create might not be, might not have the right educational purpose or whatever, or I might actually say something that is not true, right? Yeah. Which is the danger with AI. How do we verify that what we are seeing on a screen is actually the truth that is being told?
So I agree with content management, but how do we do that as a parent? Do we need AI to give the parameters of what we think is healthy for our kids, and they should? Is that a way to do it?
If you fully trust AI, then yes, you should. But I think there's always something that we as parents ourselves should also put in there, and we have our own views also, right? Yeah. But yeah, like I said, it's really about the content. What do you want your child to see, and how do you want your child to grow up? But again, how do you manage that? How do you check what is actually being seen? I'm hoping that I've seen Instagram has, something for parents to actually manage that, right? But so we'll see if this stays in the podcast. But there's on your TV, there's adult channels, which you can block.
Yeah.
And I think something similar should be actually available on those online channels. Then.
So we should be able to tell platforms like YouTube what we think is relevant content for our kids, for the way we on how we want to raise them.
Absolutely.
Right. Cool. I kind of would like to wrap this up. I think one of the important takeaways for me in this conversation was, we need to adapt, but we know that, right? And in B2B and high-tech manufacturing, we have still some challenges to overcome when it comes to the gap between sales and marketing. Maybe it's a very simple one by putting focus for sales on a certain group of people and have marketing take over the other sales part. Don't know if you agree to that, but that's kind of what I'm kind of thinking. Never looked at it that way. But yeah, that would be a great proposition to look after. Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Great talking to you. And
as always.
Hope to see you next time.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Stay connected to the Evolving Digital Podcast. See you next time.